Hi, Nick DeFabio here. I hope you're doing very well. I just wanted to make this video to tell the story of the letter that I received from Beatles producer George Martin. And I'm going to tell that story, and it's connected with the 50th anniversary of the release of the Sgt. Pepper LP. So let's get right to it. The letter from George Martin. Well, in 2006, there was a Cirque du Soleil show produced in Las Vegas at the Mirage called Beatles Love. And the music for that production was done by Giles Martin, George Martin's son. And he did mashups of Beatles songs and he remixed Beatles songs. And I heard from that album, I Am the Walrus, and I just thought it was obviously remixed, and I thought how good it sounded and how the thing that had popped into my head and a lot of other people's head at the same time was that, well, we should treat the other albums like this. And it would bring them up to the 21st century and so forth. So I wrote letters to Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, Olivia Harrison, Yoko Ono, and George Martin. And the only one who answered was Sir George Martin. And I'm going to show you that letter right now. In the letter, he thanks me for sending for the compliments that I gave, and he agrees with the fact that he thinks the Beatle album should be re-released in that format, and he says, brought up to the 21st century and so forth. He does at the end say that he no longer has a say at EMI, but he thanked me, and it's signed by him, as you can see, and it is a prized possession of mine. It hangs on the wall of my house. And so that idea carried forward to now, 2017, is the remix of the Sgt. Pepper album. So they've gone ahead now and treated the album the way that they did the Love stuff. They went back to the original 4 tracks and got as much as they could separately and remixed it. And I just wanted to give you my thoughts on the remix of the album in general. I thought that he did a great job with it. I thought that in general, it doesn't bring it up. It really does not bring it up to the 21st century. It makes it sound a lot better. It's Sgt. Pepper sounding a lot better. As far as the 21st century, I think the main limitation comes from the fact that usually the rhythm sections for those songs, and I just looked through some of the track sheets on the Beatles recording session book. A lot of those songs, the rhythm section was done at the very beginning. Therefore, the drums are kind of they're in a track with other instruments, and it's very hard to get to those drums and make them sound as big as you'd want them to sound. So the initial reaction that I had listening to the album was that, okay, I can still hear the fact that the drums they weren't processed separately, and there's no way that it's going to completely blow you away. It is the Sgt. Pepper album sounding a lot better. Since the voices were recorded later on separate tracks, he has much more ability to work with them. That's why the vocals sound so great, and there's panning going on and effects on the vocals. Now, as in regard to panning, that to me is like the main reason for fixing these albums, especially the earlier ones that were stereo, is that they didn't really know too much about stereo in those days. The stereo Sgt. Pepper album was mixed in 3 days by assistant engineers, and the mono version was mixed by all the Beatles and George Martin, and it took 3 weeks. So the stereo version has got, on what do you call it, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, it's got, the bass over here and the vocals over here. It's just so disconcerting to listen to. Just to take that and straighten it out and put things in the center and put things to the sides where they would normally be heard is a great improvement. And that's essentially what the whole album does. He takes things that were drastically panned and brings them to the center, and in that regard it sounds great, and the vocals sound great. So that's kind of my overall review of the album. It sounds wonderful, but it's Sgt. Pepper sounding better. Ringo has indicated that it might be a good idea to remix some of the other ones, like the White Album and Abbey Road. Those two albums would benefit from remixing also because of the fact that during the White Album they started going to 8-track the recording. During the recording, I believe, of While My Guitar Gently Weeps, they started using 8-track. So, and if I'm wrong about While My Guitar Gently Weeps, sorry, I think that's what it is. But anyway, during the album, they started using 8-track. So obviously now you're going to have the 8-track to work with. You're going to have some reduction mixes, but you're going to have a lot more tracks that are separate with a lot more to make sound better and to work with. Same thing with Abbey Road. Of course, by that time they were 8-track. Although Abbey Road is such a good sounding album that I don't even know if I'd want to hear it remixed, because at some point a little of it becomes distracting for me to listen to some of the remixes because of the fact that I'm so used to listening to the albums as they were. Going back to the earlier albums, what you're going to get from remixing on those is a lot less because they were 4-track, and going way back they were 2-track. So it's just going to be they're going to have less to work with as far as raw original tracks. And of course, a track like Tomorrow Never Knows on the White Album, you can't remix it because it was mixed live on the spot. Those tape loops were brought in live as they were moving the faders, so you can't really reproduce that mix. But the later ones, maybe the White Album, I guess it could be entertaining to listen to. And you know what? That's a good way to put it. If you really know the Beatle albums, it's entertaining to listen to the remixes because you can kind of hear things that he brought out that kind of got buried in the earlier mixes. And like I said, things are panned differently. Paul McCartney's guitar on Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band is over on the right side, and it's brought up to the point to me that it's almost slightly distracting. But that part is there that you don't hear it nearly as well on the original recording. It's interesting to listen to. So anyway, that's the story of the letter that I have from George Martin of the Beatles, which I cherish. And I hope you all enjoyed it. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.